Hello everybody, welcome to episode 160 of Show For You, where today we'll be going over the 2D platformer Celeste. Now, I played this on my PS5, so it had pretty good controls, really, for Celeste, but I just kind of get into the story briefly. This isn't too complex of a story, but it is complex enough to the point where it is very endearing and very interesting for a platform, because most times platformers, you have really basic plots, but this really wasn't. So, our main character is entitled Madeline, and we see as she goes to climb Celeste Mountain as a way to feel accomplishment. She needs to feel something as she wants to feel accomplishment by climbing this mountain. And so we see is at first she runs into this granny woman who's living near Celeste Mountain and lives essentially on the mountain, who is kind of a bit of a, I guess, Debbie Downer when it comes to supporting Madeline's idea of climbing the mountain. But yeah, so we see this. We also get introduced to Theo. Theo is a blogger who is just traveling up Celeste Mountain for the selfies and all of that. And he's very happy-go-lucky. So Theo is one of my favorite characters in this game, even though there's only 5 characters in total, I believe. Well, 6, because you have Oshiro, Granny, Theo, Madeline, and Madeline's mom, briefly. After the first or second level, we get a call from Madeline's mom as we see that she first mentions one of the big plot points of this, which is mental health disorders. And we see that, in fact, that Madeline has panic attacks based on what her mom states. And so we also learn that, well, I'll kind of go into this afterwards, but we see as it progresses, we ultimately end up running to this mirror, and once we run into the mirror, we get introduced to Madeline. This is not the canonical name for this character, but it is the, evil alternate ego of Madeline. It's technically only her, bad thoughts within her head that have, essentially manifested due to, the magic of Celeste Mountain. But yeah, so we see this, and obviously she starts performing some shenanigans to get in Celeste's way as she tries to climb the mountain, because Madeline is greatly, against Celeste acquiring this sense of accomplishment by climbing to the top of Celeste Mountain. Madeline, not Celeste. I for some reason, I accidentally mix up Madeline and Celeste. It feels like Madeline should be named Celeste, but it's the mountain that's named Celeste. But yeah, so we see this, and then afterwards, we end up progressing along. We end up running into Oshiro. Oshiro is the owner, the ghostly owner of this old, mansion hotel that is up, towards, it's level 3 of Celeste on Celeste Mountain. And we see as he ultimately has some interactions. We see that he's very self-conscious about his failing hotel, and ultimately we see as Madeline actually comes in and insults Oshiro about it, and then due to this, he's unable to discern between Madeline and Madeline, so he turns to this monstrous form and chases Madeline out of the mansion eventually. But yeah, so we see that, and then ultimately the story just continues to progress. And we see as Madeline, in fact, struggles with both depression and panic attacks. We see at one point when Theo and Madeline are traveling along a gondola, we see that Madeline breaks down into a panic attack because it stops, and then Theo teaches her a nice breathing technique, which is able to break her out of that panic attack that his grandfather taught him. And also we learn through some brief interactions that Theo has a sister by the name of Alex who's going to law school and is very similar to Madeline, especially in her mental health. Yeah, so this story is really just genuinely a, story of mental health. We see as, ultimately, Madeline begins to understand Madeline, and they begin to, ultimately, once again, reunite as a person. Because the goal of this entire Celeste trip was to feel accomplishment, but it is still a sense of accomplishment, but Madeline being able to, reconcile with her bad half and become a whole person once more is kind of the accomplishment that is the underlying accomplishment, yet still the major accomplishment of the story. But the accomplishment of the game is the mountain. But yeah, so we see that story play out, and yeah, there's a lot more intricacy to it than I just gave it there. That's kind of the general gist of what happens in the story of Celeste. Now, I know that is, like I said, a very general and very, undignifying, rendition of the story, but it is simple but also complex at the same time. I really don't know how to explain it because it is limited through the abilities of vestibule. Vehicle. That's the correct term. Vehicle of a 2D platformer, but it still gets that complexity right. So it's really just a story about mental health and Madeline conquering, like I said, her bad self, her conquering her mental health and reacquiring a sense of peace and fortitude. But ultimately all that plays out. We see as everything goes hunky-dory, everyone is able to live their life successfully. We see as Oshiro goes back to living normally. We see as Theo ends up meeting up and going back to Seattle where he lives. And we see as Madeline's able to climb to the top of the mountain where her and Madeline are chilling and everything's good. Well, hold up. Yeah, battling follows you out at the top. But yeah, so that is, like I said, the general story. Now let's go into gameplay. Now the gameplay of this game was very fun because how it works is this platforming is inherently difficult, but it is not unfairly difficult. And what makes it a lot more tolerable is there's not a life system. You just infinite lives. You can die how many times you want to, and do whatever. Since you don't have the, I guess, downside of dying. Now you do return to checkpoints. You don't instantly go back to where you last jumped into a pit, but it is still not difficult, but it is a challenge. It is certainly a challenge. And once you get to levels 8 and 9, which are post game essentially, they are hard. 8 and 9, and then you get to the B and C sides of levels because there's 3 versions of each level. You have to find cassettes throughout, and you also have to collect these cold hearts, the blue hearts, crystal hearts, that's what they're called. And the cassettes give you a separate side to each level, and beating the B side of level will then give you the C side, so then you can have 3 levels. But yeah, so that's kind of how the mechanics worked. Now, I guess my biggest gripe with it would be the long aerial movement. I'm not great at platformers. I'm good, but I'm not great. My biggest accomplishment I'd say in platforming was beating fully 100% the final level of Mario Wonder, because that was the hardest level I've ever faced. It took me 6 hours, but I did it. But yeah. So it was difficult for me, but it was still fun. I did not feel like I was being robbed or being cheated anyway, because I was dying. That was part of the game. That was part of it. And so I felt like this game was very enjoyable to play. It was very smooth and very nice platform. It's very intricate too. It can be very difficult at times once you get to the more intricate parts of the level, because you have to learn the controls. You have to master the controls to become, I guess, good at Celeste. But yeah, so that's kind of just the general gameplay. Obviously, it's your basic 2D platformer and stuff. Jumping over spike pits, jumping over pits, jumping over moving objects, projectiles, stuff like that. But yeah, so one thing I did like was how Celeste works, or not Celeste, how Madeline works, is Madeline can dash once. But however, once you combine with Madeline, you can dash twice. I really liked how they employed that dash ability throughout. Yeah, so art style, I really did enjoy the sprite art and the pixel work in this. It was very enjoyable, and it was very appealing to the eye, even though it was very simplistic. All of the worlds or levels had beautiful themes to them, and I really enjoyed that because it was very visually appealing. It was nice eye candy. Yeah, so the favorite thing of mine personally about Celeste was the music. You need to listen to the soundtrack. That's just the bottom line. That's the brass tacks. You need to listen to this soundtrack, because the Celeste soundtrack is phenomenal. Though you may die 8 million times in one spot and be listening to the same track over and over and over again, it'll still sound fresh every single time, because the soundtrack is literally just that good. And I loved it. It was great. I really don't know what my favorite level music-wise would be. I know I loved 9. 9 had some great music to it. But yeah, that might just be because I was on 9 for so long, because of how difficult level 9 is. And it's a 45-minute long, level, even if you don't die all the time while playing it. But yeah, I guess my favorite character, like I said, would probably be Theo. I really enjoyed Theo because he was goofy, and he was a nice shining light in a kind of world of mental darkness and stuff like that. So it was really enjoyable to see Theo and see him about, even though he was his own complex character. He all had his own doubts, he had his own problems too, but he was able to help Madeline through her difficulties, because he had experienced some of them and had similar background to, I guess, relate with Madeline. But yeah, what else is there to talk about? Like I said, art was good, music was good, difficulty was good. Like I said, my favorite part was the music. So I really don't know. Is there anything else? I guess collectibles. Like I said, you have your crystal hearts and your cassettes. Now, probably the most, and you have your strawberries. I forgot about the strawberries. Now, I'd say the most enjoyable one to collect, were probably the cassettes, because each level you'd go in and have these metronome music following blocks, where one pops out at a certain beat and another one pops out in the next. So yeah, that was really enjoyable, and that's why I liked collecting these cassettes the most, because they gave you that little intricate part of the level, which wasn't everywhere. It was only at spots where you had to get the cassettes. And the crystal hearts, they were okay, but they were just kind of odd at points. And the strawberries, just your regular things, like your star coins in Mario, or I don't know. It's just, star coins or just stars in Mario 64, even though that's not a 2D platformer. But yeah, so that's all that really was for Celeste. It was very enjoyable, and I would highly recommend it. It's only a $20 game. I had it for free since it was on PlayStation Plus Extra. But yeah, like I said, that's all there really is for that, and that's all there really is for episode 160 of Shelf Review. So thank you very much for watching.